Hey everybody, welcome back to Church Talk, where we talk about everything involving the local church. My name is Rob, and today we're going to be talking about how do we keep purity in worship in a performance-driven culture. So today I have with me our guitarist, our lead guitarist, and one of our drummers here at the Bridge. This is Andrew and Arian, and we're going to be talking just a little bit about how do we keep a focused and purity in our worship in the culture that is so performance driven, and with all the different tech stuff that we have and all the different things, and we want to be excellent in everything that we do. But it's so easy to move into that perfection, and so easy to move into that I want to be better, I want to do better, and then we get into that performance mode. How do we stay out of that performance mode but still operate in excellence? How do you guys find to do that? And Arian, we'll start with you with the drums.
Obviously, I say it all the time. Might as well put it on a t-shirt or something, but you got to humble yourself before the Lord. That's got to be your number one thing before you even step foot behind the gift he's given you. Make sure you humble yourself.
It's very easy to get caught up in the performance of it because it's important to do well and bring the best of your gift before God, because if anyone deserves the best, it's him. But it's almost even more important to remember that it's not really a performance, it's a ministry. And if we get caught up in doing our very best, then we're trying to reach higher than where we are, and we're practicing when we're supposed to be playing, if that kind of makes sense. So play as you play, and if you can't reach it, then practice later, but don't let it impede your worship. I guess that's kind of a rambly way to answer the question.
A lot of musicians, worship musicians, tend to forget that we're playing for one audience. Yeah, there's a congregation there, but our job is to fill the room with his presence and glorify his name, not glorify our name. And so it's okay to practice your gift and be good at it, but you have to remember you're only doing it for one person, and that's God, not the congregation. There's no competition. No one's better than anybody. We all are on one platform trying to glorify his name, which, like I said, you just got to humble yourself before the Lord.
There's an element of performance in everything that's going on because we are in front of people. So we are performing a song, but it's not for the people, or it's not to the people. It's to the Lord. And there's also, I think a lot of times people get like worship ministry and music ministry mixed up. Because if you're in worship ministry, you are leading those people to the Lord. It's not about the people that's there. It's about ministering to the Lord. It's worshiping him, pointing people to him. But it's not even about pointing people to him. It's just solely, Lord, you're talking to the Lord. You're singing to the Lord. And so many times we get caught up, worship teams get caught up in the ministering the people thought, which there's nothing wrong with ministering to people, and there's nothing wrong with ministering to people through music. But there's a time and a place for that, and worship time is not for that. The time for worship, unless the Lord wants you to turn things and make it about the people. When it's time to worship, it's time to focus on the Lord and to bring our gifts to the Lord and allow the people of the congregation to come together with us to focus on the Lord. And what a lot of people want to do is they want to minister to people because they have a heart for people. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's the job of the pastor at the moment of a church service, unless you're ministering to the people through music. And that's a whole different ministry. And if you're ministering to people through your music, then I think even then it can be even maybe a little bit more difficult because at that moment you are performing for the people, just like a preacher or a pastor. His performance is to the people because they're the ones who's listening to a message. He's shouting out or speaking out this message, where if we're ministering to people, we are singing a message. And so I think it's important that we don't confuse those two from a worship perspective to a ministering to people perspective. And when we are on a worship team, it's so easy to move into ministering to people mode, because people will tell you, oh, I love that solo you had today, or man, those drums were rocking today. And all that's good. It's all that is great when we hear that, and we need to receive it. Mm-hmm. But we also need to just understand, like you said, our audience wasn't them. You know, even though they heard, you know, they were there, they were present, but they weren't the audience. It was like I wasn't, and we don't need to say this because it's kind of rude to people, I think, but it's like, you're not my audience. Right. You know, I'm playing to the Lord, and we have to keep that heart. I think that's important, and because there's a lot of stuff going on right there, and with our setup, we don't have any amplifiers on the stage. We don't have any monitors on the stage. Our stage is as quiet as it can be, because, you know, our drums are enclosed, no monitors, no amps. So if you come onto the stage, it's like, man, I can't hear. You know, if you don't have your in-ear in, you just can't hear you can't hear anything. So you have a lot of tech stuff going on to be able to do that well. But with all the stuff that you guys have, even in the drum booth with all the different drum machines and clicks and all the click tracks and guides, which we don't use here, but with all that stuff, how do you maintain that purity in worship when you have a click going off in your head and a guide going off that's saying, you know, you need to go to verse 1. Okay, now you need to go to verse 2. And it's telling you where to go. And like I say, here we don't use them just because I don't like them. They distract me. Yeah. But I know you have used them a lot, and I know your worship is pure. How do you maintain that pureness of worship, even in, because for me it makes me feel like I'm performing the song, because it moves me out of the flow of worship into listening to that to make sure that I'm on. But that's just me. Every musician is different. But for you, how does that work?
The biggest thing for me, especially starting off, I always have this saying. I have it written on my snare. It's the heart before the beat. So basically, you remove the me and I out of your vocabulary whenever you're behind the kit. With me, it was kind of like I was just blocking out the guide. Like, she was there. I knew she was there. But it was more so just trying my best to block her out and just focus on worshiping. It is kind of hard a little bit, but once it was almost like I got used to it, being around, and like at the church that I was playing at, it was going to be there regardless. So I couldn't really complain. But it's more so just removing the words me and I out of the situation, because there was at one point where I was making it about me. I'll be humble enough to admit that I was making it about me at one point, and then I got humbled myself. He humbled me and was basically like, okay, if you're gonna do this for me, you're gonna do this for me, not for yourself. And so just basically just move the vocabulary me and I out of your sentences, and just realize that you're doing it for one man, and you should be good. I would really just block out the guide, though. Just try my best to. She's there, you know. She's there. You were there too, you know. She's always gonna be there. Just try your best to block it out. Now click, I would mainly focus on click a little bit more, of course, because, like you say, the drums is what set the tempo, and so right. I'm off, everybody's off. Right. So it was more so focusing on the click more. I always have a click turned up whenever I was playing, just to make sure I'm still with everybody and,
Right.
and you know, not messing up or anything.
I would almost venture to say that having a click tracking guide in your ear makes it almost impossible to keep your mind focused on the worship, because it's a constant reminder of the performance. This is where you go next. This is where you go next. You know, and then having the click loud enough to hear over everything else, it's like a hammer hitting you in the back of the head.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
And then, but then with the other part of it, with the technology and stuff that I use to play the guitar, my guitar pedals and stuff, you play it just like an instrument. And so whenever I want my delay to sound a certain way, I tap in the tempo and I play it like it's an instrument. Or if I want an effect turned on or off at a certain point, then I'll, you know, it all comes with practice. They're like instruments themselves because they're an extension of the instrument that I'm playing.
I see him all the time too. He's over there jamming, just jamming. It's definitely, it's okay to have fun.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Definitely, like, we're not saying like, oh, you need to be serious all the time. It's okay to have fun, but don't have too much fun to the point where you're forgetting who it's about. Like,
Yeah.
it's okay.
Don't make it about the fun.
Right.
But have fun, have joy while we're, because there's joy in the presence of the Lord.
Yeah.
You know, and the Bible says that the joy of the Lord is our strength. Yeah. So, you know, why not enjoy what we're doing for the Lord? You know, but, you know, if you are using click tracks and guides and things like that, I'm not saying that your worship isn't pure, because I know that there are people who, you know, the church we used to go to, they use clicks and they use tracks, and those, because I would ask the question, like, how do you guys like handle that? I can't think with that. And they're like, oh, you get used to it. And then one lady told me, she said, well, that really just helps me stay on point. That you know, if I just kind of get lost in the moment, that's there to remind me where we're going in the song, and it keeps me where I need to be. And I'm like, that's awesome. For her, it works really well. She you know, really enjoys that. But for me, it's like, oh my goodness, it just took the moment completely out of it for me. And I found myself, like, after church, I felt like I really didn't worship. I felt like I don't know if performing is even the right word, but I felt like it was a job to provide worship for other people. And I would end up going home and going up to the piano and sitting down and worshiping for a little while, because I felt like I didn't give the Lord anything. And that was just the way I felt. Now, I know there's going to be a lot of people who disagree with that, but there may be a lot of people who agree too. See, everybody's different, and these are all tools of ministry, and I don't think one is right or wrong.
Yeah.
But sometimes even those good things can stand in the way at times. They can, a blessing can sometimes be something that the enemy can use in our life as well.
One thing I would definitely love when I was going to the other church that I was going to, my uncle was the worship leader, so just being able to do that with him was just always a blessing for me. It was just, I was like, man, I get to do this with my uncle. This is awesome. But there would be moments where, because, you know, they do use click, but there would be moments where it gets spontaneous, and he'll just look over at me and he'll just go, turn it off. And moments like those is where I really get into it myself, because that lets me know that what we're doing is real. Lets me know where we're at right now is real. And so moments like that, I always just, or like even when we're doing worship, because we've gotten to do it a little bit, there'll be moments where you're playing and you'll turn around and you're just smiling, and I'm like, yeah, this is awesome. This is awesome. That I get goosebumps sometimes. Like, I'm getting them right now just thinking about it, because it's just like, we know what we're doing is changing lives, and we're filling the room with His presence, and so it's just gets me goosebumps every single time. Man.
Yeah, it's funny too, because I'll look around at our team and I look over at you, and there's no expression on your face at all, and you're jamming, man. It sounds awesome, but I know from a guitarist point of view that when I'm playing electric, I look like I'm angry because I'm focused. And sometimes even on acoustic, I'll be focused. But I'll look over at you at times, and you are smiling, you are laughing, you're having an awesome time, and you're just back here drumming. I'm like, this is awesome. I love this. And and our other musicians are, all of us are different. Some of us, one of our musicians, Clark, he's one of our bass players. There'll be times like, where'd the bass go? And I'll look back, and
worshiping.
His hands are up, and he's like, I'm not gonna play right now.
Yeah.
I'm gonna worship in a different way, and that's okay, because I think that's one way that we can say it's not about the performance, is that when the Lord is telling us, to lay down our instrument, or to kneel, or whatever the case is, or to put your instrument down and just lay on your face, it's okay. It's okay to do that. Whereas if it's about the performance, it's like, I can't do that. I've got to play this instrument. There's times it's like we just can't play. It's like we just got to stop and just allow voices to be the instrument.
That's when you know it's he's taken over in moments like those. Like, I haven't had a moment yet where I've had to stop playing. I've definitely gotten teary-eyed on a couple songs, crying a little bit, and it's all right. But I'm sure the moment's coming. I'm not saying it's not coming. I'm sure there's going to be a song that touches my heart, and I'm going to end up like, hey, I can't do this anymore. But that's when you know it's genuine. If worship gets in a genuine moment, and you feel like you have to play and you can't stop, that's where it becomes an issue. Because at the end of the day, when it comes to worship, feel free to just surrender and just say, hey, I can't play anymore. I got to go to the altar myself, and let everybody else do what they're doing. Obviously don't, be a huge distraction, but it's okay to stop what you're doing and just lift your hands and surrender. It's definitely okay to do that. And I feel like a lot of worship musicians get in moments where they're like, oh man, I really want to worship, but I can't. Because if I stop, then it messes everything. It won't.
It's really not about the performance of the song. Because in that moment, when, like what you're saying, where we can't stop, we can't worship ourselves. At that moment in your mind, it's become about a performance for the people. Yeah. And you're providing a means of worship for the people, rather than going before the Lord yourself. Because I'm a believer that when the way that we lead worship isn't about providing a means for the people to worship, and then like saying, come on, let's go into the presence of the Lord, and then step back and like push them in. It's like, I got to go in myself. And though maybe I'm the leader, and I kind of have to watch people and watch how the Lord's moving on them and what they're doing, and know how the Lord wants me to lead them. But I still have to go into the presence of the Lord myself. And when that happens, it's a personal thing, that it's like at that moment, I'm not really leading anybody anymore. Because it's almost like if you're going to lead people into a pool, you got wet when you got in the pool. There's no, you're not standing outside of it. You're not standing out on the deck of the pool and shoving people in and saying, okay, you guys get in. I was in yesterday. It's like, no, I'm going to dive in, and I'm going to look back, and I'm going to be wet, and I'm going to say, hey, the water's come in, the water's good. And before you know it, the people are in the pool. Like, you don't have to lead them anymore. They're in. They're already wet. But you're affected by the presence of God in the same way that others are, because we're leading them. We're leading them by example.
Well, when you think about the analogy of leadership, you can know, if you've lived in a city all your life and you know it like the back of your hand, you can give people directions to any place in the city. Say they start here and you want them to get here. and you can give them the perfect directions, but they're still going to be confused and wondering, am I going the right way? But if you were to take them and show them the way, it doesn't matter that you've been there a million times. It matters that you're showing this person who hasn't been, or maybe has only been a couple times.
And it's like, another thing is, I mean, I know you've noticed it. I always put worship before the musician. Worship musician, worship leader. Because there's a difference between a musician and a worship musician. And a lot of times, even now, there are worship musicians who are, for instance, like Brandon Lake, Phil Wickham, all those guys. They are worship musicians, but being treated like celebrities. And that's where I feel like sometimes we may lose the purity in worship. Like, it's okay to go to their shows, and I'm sure there's genuine worship moments, but when you start treating them like celebrities, that's where the purity was lost.
Right.
They're worship musicians.
That makes it really hard on them.
Yeah.
You know, because, I mean, we don't know them. I mean, their hearts may be so pure, but then again, maybe not. Maybe they're struggling with being that celebrity. I have no clue. But I'm sure that on the small scale where we're at, when we would travel or whatever, and you would get compliments, and it can go to your head. And one guy here, he watched one of our videos, and we were talking about when people would say great job and stuff, and how we would sometimes pride can come in, and we have to just knock that out before it takes hold of us. And he came up to me after watching, and he's like, I'm not going to tell you you've done good anymore. I don't want you to get prideful. But and of course he's joking around with us. Yeah. But it is true though, because the more people that compliment you, it's so easy to take those compliments and be like, yeah, we're getting pretty good. Yeah, we're good. And before you know it, you're doing it for yourself, and you're receiving glory from it and that celebrity status, and that's important, that we don't treat those worship leaders like celebrities. I mean, we can look up to them, and we can love what they're doing. Absolutely. And love them, but I think it is important that, yeah, you're right, they're not celebrities, they're worship leaders. Yeah,
like, for me, I'll go a little bit off topic, because I feel like this can help someone if they're starting out in ministry. For me, when I first started out worship drumming, it was about me and I. Like, getting compliments like that, I'm like, oh man, this is cool. Eyes are on me. Let's go. And I know you guys probably remember it. The worship night we had for the young adults last year was definitely one of those moments where it was more so about me and I, because I knew there were going to be people there, and they were watching me. And I seen my mentor, Jacob. He had his Thanksgiving worship night or whatever. I'm like, oh yeah, I want to do this. There's a lot of people here. I want to do this. And so, starting off, it can be very hard to not think about yourself starting off, because at first I was. I'm not afraid to admit it, I was. And like I said, that's when the Lord humbled me, because I wasn't humbling myself before him. So he was like, okay, I'll humble you. And I was saying, oh man, there's going to be so many people here. It's going to be like hundreds of young adults and all this other. Do you remember the conversations we were having? And I feel like they knew, and they were just staring at me. They were like, yeah, okay. Judah's back there. He's laughing. Like I was saying all these things. I was like, there's going to be 600 people there. We're going to have baptisms and all this other stuff. And they're just looking at me like, I think they knew. They just wasn't saying anything. But so we ended up doing the worship night, and we're waiting for countdown or whatever. And I'm realizing there's not a lot of people showing up. And I'm like, okay, maybe they'll show up a little closer to it. And I'm sitting out in the foyer, and countdown started, and I'm like, okay, there's like 15 people here. There's like 15 people here. What's going on? And so we were like 3 minutes before we were about to head up. And Jacob Hunt, shout out Jacob Hunt. He was in the tech booth. I had him run sound for the night. And I'm like, man, there's not a lot of people here. And he's like, keep going. Just keep going. It doesn't matter. And I'm like, at that point, I was like, it does matter. I want people here. I was like, it does matter. What do you mean? What are you talking about? So I remember being up there, and I'm like super bummed while I'm playing and stuff. And so the way how we had the layout was 4-song sermon, 4 songs. So we do the first 4 songs, and Sam Plumley, he was speaking there, and he's like, give it up for this amazing team. And you hear the claps, and it's like not a lot of people, and I'm just like, and so my friend at the time, I'm sitting with them, and they're like, what's wrong? And I'm like, there's not a lot of people here. And like I remember having a baptism team there, and they're just sitting up there up front with the towels and stuff, and they're just like just sitting there, and they're still into it. I'm like, how are you guys into it? There's not a lot of people here. And so at that moment, I say that's when I got humbled in ministry. That's when I'll say it started to begin to be pure, because after that, around that time, I was the second drummer, and so I was only playing whenever Jacob would go on vacation or anything. So I had like a little bit of a break after that to just sit back and not play drums. And so I remember sitting in my car, and I was crying, and I texted Jacob. He's like, man, awesome night. Apparently there were people from Maranatha there, and da-da-da-da-da. You guys killed it. And I remember texting him, and I started getting teary-eyed. I'm like, I don't feel like I did a good job. And he's like, what do you mean? And I'm like, there wasn't a lot of people there, man. And he's like, so? How many people were in the upper room? And I'm like, oh, I get you. I get what you're saying. So I remember crying that whole night and just praying. I was just like, okay, God, I'm ready. I'll surrender. I'll do it for you. And that next Sunday I got to play, and I just remember getting goosebumps in my heart. I was just like, it was feeling genuine. I'm like, okay, so this is what it feels like to genuinely worship. Okay. And then it was just uphill from there. I had opportunities to play at festivals and all this other stuff, and I think now it's to the point where I get a little uncomfortable getting compliments, because it's just like whenever somebody's like, oh yeah, you killed it, I'll try and put it on somebody else, like, well, yeah, Rob, he killed it too. He was singing and stuff. He was, and so I'm still working on it, because it's okay to get compliments and stuff.
Right. It is. You just need to receive it, because they're wanting to give you a compliment, and you just receive it and say, thank you. I appreciate that, and let it be just that. Don't let it get to your head, but receive the compliment, because the whole thing about, even like with the worship night that you planned out that evening. The success isn't measured upon the outcome. Yeah. But the success is measured upon, did I do what the Lord told me to do? Was I obedient? Mm-hmm. And the outcome of what the people done, the outcome is on the Lord. Yeah. And on the people. So if you done what he told you to do, you were successful, no matter what the outcome looks like to us, or no matter how the people. Because see, I do the same thing. We'll be leading on a Sunday, and like, man, it just feels like nobody was with us. It felt like nobody really entered into worship with us, and and you feel like you're not very successful in that moment. But did I do the songs the Lord wanted to hear? Did we do the songs that I feel like he wanted to use? Were we obedient to him, and did we worship him? And if the answer is yes to that, we were successful that morning. Even if we messed up, we'd done what he told us to do. And the response of the people is on the people, and the response of the room is on the Lord. So when we give that to him, and we're like, no matter what the people do, because you never know. Sometimes people, especially like in preaching, I'll preach a message and I'll think, oh man, that was really good. There's going to be people, like when I'm thinking about it, like in the truck on the way home, whatever, I'm going over things in my mind, and then I get here and I preach the message, and like I know people are going to come to the altar, and we're going to pray for people, and then what happens? Nothing. And I'm like, what in the world just happened? Why did nobody respond? And then 3 weeks later, someone says, oh, that message you preached, I can't get that out of my mind. And I've been going to the Lord about that, and the Lord's helping me do something. And I'm like, I was successful. Not because of, it's like the Lord revealed to me that I was successful through that, but because I'd done what he told me to do, that was success, not what happened and how people moved.
Yeah, man. And I think it's like, and a lot of worship musicians tend to forget this, whether you're a drummer, guitarist, keyboard, whatever you're doing, it can just as much change somebody's life just as much as a vocalist. By the beat of a drum, strum of a string, it can change their life. They may not tell you that what you did changed their life, but that part doesn't matter. You know what I mean? And a lot of worship musicians tend to forget that, and they may feel left out, all this other stuff. People may not tell you that, oh man, the way how you just worship today, seeing that in you made me want to make a deeper connection.
And it's amazing because you can take your worship to the Lord, and you're not making it about people, but the Lord in his goodness will use that to minister to people, even though you weren't ministering to anybody but the Lord.
Yeah, man.
And so many times, we start off a service ministering to the Lord, and in his goodness, he makes it about us. And it's like he turns the tables sometimes, and he begins to bless people and uses the music that we're doing, that we're playing, and the worship that we're giving the Lord, and he's blessing people because they've entered into his presence. And so many times people will say, oh, the worship was great, or that song just really touched me, or whatever. And like, but it wasn't to you. We don't say that, but sometimes we think it in our minds.
That was about you.
It was to the Lord, but it's because God's so good and he loves us so much that it's like he comes down and ministers to us while we're ministering to him. It's like sometimes we don't understand. Our minds are too small. Just really quickly, what do you guys love about being on a worship team?
Mine's gonna be long, so you can go first, my brother.
Okay, so not everybody's expression of worship is the same. Now, everybody's greatest expression of worship is going to be the way they conduct their lives, whether or not their life worships God as they, walk through life. But in terms of our gathering together, not everyone, takes off running up and down the aisles or dances. I mean, I don't even like to lift my hands up, and that's kind of stupid, but it's just, it is kind of stupid, but
You're not alone. I'm not there yet either. We'll get there.
But my expression of worship is to play an instrument. So, if I'm not playing, then I feel like I'm just kind of missing out today. It's not like, oh, I get a break. It's, oh, I don't get to play today. And that's not because it's about me. It's because I like to play. That's my expression of worship. So that's what I get to do when I play guitar on the worship team.
It's weird because if you would have told me 5 years ago that I was going to be on some part of ministry, I would have been said, "No, you're crazy. There's no way." Especially coming here, being in the moment of coming here and you guys already having a drummer. Obviously, I love to play drums, obviously, but like how we talked about me moving and transitioning here, and not being pushed in already to make it fair for other people. Moments like that is where, again, you just have to be humble and say, okay, I'm eventually going to start playing because I love to play. Like you said, I love doing what I do. Obviously, because you see me smiling up there all the time. But in moments like that is where you just, it's okay to surrender your gift and just say, okay, I don't want to be thrown into the situation because I got to make it fair for the others. Obviously, deep down, I'm probably not going to like it. But at the end of the day, it's fair, and I'll start playing eventually. Like, just remember that just because he's given you a gift doesn't mean he cannot take it away from you. And a lot of worship musicians tend to forget that, and I'd say that's another way you can keep it pure. Remember that, okay, he's given you that gift, don't take advantage of it.
Yeah.
You know, do not take advantage of it. That's probably the biggest thing I'd say. Don't take advantage of your gift, because just because he gave it to you, he can take it away. So it's okay to surrender your gift and say, okay, you don't want me playing right now, okay, that's fine. I'll get to know the congregation, get to know people, and whenever you say it's time for me to start playing, that's when I'll start playing. Instead of, I want to play right now kind of thing, and that's just not how you do that. So yeah, I love it too.
Well, guys, thank you all so much for watching this episode. And if you got value out of this, make sure that you hit the like button, and if you haven't subscribe for me. And you know, I'm finding out that when you hit the like, it helps to send this video on out to other people. It helps grow the channel. So help me out, grow the channel with me, and we'll see you guys next time on Church Talk. Thanks for watching.